Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. We are currently in the middle of a lockdown in the UK. All the schools are shut and the kids are at home. So the other day I said that I would like to start showcasing some games on my channel that I think are good games for families to play together whilst they're all in self-isolation. My selection criteria for these games were that they had to be fun for everybody, that parents could sit down with the children and have just as much fun as the children would, but also that they would have some kind of educational merit, that they would help with things like mathematics, reading, logic, puzzle solving, all that stuff. And so as we are practicing social distancing, I thought a great game to start this little kind of series I'm going to be doing is Santorini, a game about building ivory towers on an island. Santorini is a game that launched on Kickstarter, and I saw it while it was on Kickstarter, and I have to admit I was very impressed by it. It looked fantastic, but I don't back games on Kickstarter, so what we're looking at here is actually the retail edition. And it turns out I'm glad I didn't back it on Kickstarter, because I managed to pick up this retail copy for about £17. This is a version published by Spin Master, who I think picked it up after the initial Kickstarter run sold out. And obviously the Kickstarter edition has more stuff. There was a Golden Fleece expansion, and it had a nice sort of blue seascape that the island sat on. However, most, if not all of that stuff is still available in a Golden Fleece expansion that you can get for the retail game. So those extra elements are available, but I think that this is a fantastic game as is, as it comes out of the box, without any expansions, and the seascape is just window dressing anyway. And there's a huge amount going for this game. It's a really nice abstract game, but they've given it a really lovely theme. And you can see it's got a really strong toy factor, and that can be quite important when you're playing games with younger children. There's something about having little characters, cute artwork, and a theme that they can kind of get behind and understand rather than more abstract concepts. And it's a game that actually plays from 2 to 4 players. And that's really good as well, because it's primarily designed as a 2-player head-to-head game. It can cater for single-parent families, or families like mine where my wife is a key worker. She works for the emergency services, so she's still out working. I'm a freelance worker. I work from home, and so I'm at home with my daughter. So a lot of the time it's just the two of us. So having a good 2-player game is fantastic to have, but also a 2-player game that when my wife is at home, we can scale up and we can play with 3 players. And also, this is an incredibly easy game to learn how to play. It's one of those games that it's very easy to learn, quite difficult to master, and I am particularly poor at this game. For some reason, I have a mental block with this game that makes it very difficult for me to see the winning moves when they are quite clearly presented in front of me. So as you can see, we have an island, and on the island we have builders. Each player has a pair of builders under their control. We have a little male builder, and we have a little female builder for each player. And these builders move around the island building towers, and the towers are constructed in stages. We have a first floor, a second floor, a third floor, and then to complete the tower, we have a blue dome. This is my main problem with this game, is that the domes are a little bit slippery in the grasp. I tend to drop them quite a bit. And the way that the game works is incredibly simple. On your turn, you pick one of your builders. You have to move one space. You can move orthogonally or diagonally, but you cannot move into a space containing another player. You can move into a space with a tower as long as that tower is no more than 1 level higher than your current level. For example, if I wanted to move this blue builder here, and there was a level 1 tower there, I am free to move onto that tower. That's allowed. That's a 1 step up. If the tower was 2 or more levels high, I am not able to climb that tower. However, if I was up the tower, I could freely jump off. You can go down any number of levels, but you can only go up one level. And after you have moved, you have to build. And you can build into any unoccupied adjacent space. And you can build onto an existing tower, regardless of how high that tower is, or you can start a new tower. So if I move to here, make sure it's a legal move. If I move to there, I could start a new tower on any of these adjacent spaces. And that's it. That's all you're doing. On your turn, one move, one build. And the aim of the game is to get one of your builders up to the top of a tower before someone puts a blue dome on the top of that tower. Hop down for a second, mate. So, that's the kind of tower you want to get on top of. You want to be up on the top here, and if you can get one of your builders into that position, you win the game. Of course, this is quite difficult because you can only get up to the top of a level 3 tower from the top of a level 2 tower, but anybody can actually build onto a level 3 tower. So you might be in a situation where, imagine a too high tower here, you're thinking on your next turn you can just hop up there, but then on this guy's turn he moves one space and then he builds a dome on top of there, and suddenly you can't move there anymore. And that's how the game develops. It's a game of positional play. It's a game of blocking your opponent's moves whilst setting up your own steps so that you can gradually work your way up into a position where you can hop onto the top of a tower. And you will win the game if you get to the top of a tower, or if on your opponent's turn your opponent is not able to make a legal move, which is a move followed by a build. And that's the basic game, that's the beginner game, that's what they recommend you start with. And that's a pretty fun game in its own right. It's something that can really get the old grey matter turning over. You can really start thinking very carefully about your moves, and it's really interesting to see my daughter planning out her moves and figuring out where she's going to go next and figuring out how she's going to block me, and she's actually pretty good at this game. But once you've played a few games, you've got a few games under your belt, what this game also introduces is god cards. And these, each player is allocated a god card at the start of the game, and these god cards give you a special ability, something that breaks those normal basic rules that I've explained. For example, you may have a god that allows you to move into a space that's occupied by an opponent's piece, which you aren't normally allowed to do. You may get a god that allows you to win the game by jumping off of a high tower rather than just climbing up a high tower. And I think there's 30 gods in total. There's a set of basic ones, and then there are a set of more complicated ones that have more advanced rules. The game can scale up as your children get more adept at playing it. You start with that basic game with just very simple positional play. Then you introduce the asymmetric powers using the basic gods, and then once they've got the hang of those, you can introduce the more complicated gods as well. So there's a really nice sense of progression, something that you can all learn the game together, play together, and develop your skills as a family. And if you want to play as a 3-player game, you just introduce another set of builders for the 3rd player. And if you're playing with 3 players, you have to use gods. And then if you want to introduce a 4th player, this is really interesting. You go back to only having 2 teams of builders, and you play in teams. So players in teams will sit opposite each other, and as play moves clockwise around the table, you will take a turn every other turn. And that, I've not had a chance to play the game that way yet. I can see that being a fascinating challenge, because you don't want to openly discuss your strategies, so you're going to have to really get in sync with your partner. You're going to have to read each other's minds and figure out what one person is trying to do to benefit the other person. You've got to try and set up combos without openly saying, I'm moving into a position for you to get this tower. You have to hope that your partner sees the same moves that you're seeing and you work in tandem. And that's really going to build a sense of cooperation in a competitive structure. And that can help with things like non-verbal communication, just thinking outside of the box, thinking logically, trying to get inside the head of another player. Really useful gaming skills. And that's it, really. This isn't one of those games that's going to teach things like mathematics or history or creative writing or even reading. There's no reading in the game at all, really. The god cards are all use iconography. But it is a game that's going to encourage children to think things out, to solve puzzles, to think logically, to try and second guess what other people are doing, to try and develop a strategy that they keep secret from their opponent. And it's got a very sort of chess-like quality to it without having the complication of chess. Now, I know chess isn't a particularly complicated game, but for younger children, chess has got a lot of different pieces that each move in different ways. Here you've got 2 pieces, and whichever one you move, they have the same option. It's 1 move, 1 build. And that's really the strength of the game. The strength of the game is in those very simple mechanisms that can actually develop into quite a brain-burning gaming session. Yet whilst still keeping it a fun theme, it's relatively light, it plays really quickly, so you can get through a game of this in 10-15 minutes, so you can play several games to do like a best of 3 or whatever, or you can just fit it into a half-hour break between working on maths books or whatever subject you're learning during your self-isolation. I think building the towers up has a strong toy feel to it. I mean, it's like building blocks, and that's very appealing, and once you start building towers, it looks beautiful on the table, which are all good things for engaging children, engaging their imaginations. And of course, we have a lot of god cards, using characters like Atlas and Athena and Hermes and the Minotaur. So things that you can discuss with your children. There's no real information in the game about who these gods are and what they did and the history behind them, the mythology behind them, but it creates talking points that you can discuss further with your kids if you feel like it. But yeah, this is one that I recommend. It's a really strong abstract game with a good theme that plays really well with 2 players, plays okay with 3 players, and also has a really interesting team play feature for 4 players. And I do feel that this is a game that parents and children can compete at a relatively even level without needing to do things like nerf certain abilities or give younger players some kind of advantage. But of course, that might just be the fact that I'm terrible at this game, or maybe my daughter is just incredibly good at it. But overall, this is one I recommend. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have liked the video, please consider pressing that like button. If you have really liked the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Stay safe, be healthy, bye bye.